Newsflash. We don't want an internationalist country. We don't want world banks, globalization of our economy, a country with no border and no identity. You are not allowed to change the identity of this country. Americans want a nation state. Our country, with a history of freedom, is combined with a history of responsibility. And yet our proud history, even our money, is being rewritten to accommodate a new worldview. We are so beaten down by political correctness that most of us are numb to the surrender of America. And as for those naysayers, the one who say, Donald Trump just can't win, listen up. Those naysayers in England got it all wrong, didn't they? Prime Minister Cameron got it all wrong. You know, the one who criticized Donald Trump for his temporary ban on Muslims. And now Cameron's out. Obama, too, got it all wrong, jetting to England as if he were the world's dictator, telling the Brits what's good for them. And while we're at it, Hillary Clinton got it all wrong on just about everything except her bank account. When the President of the United States, a country founded on the Judeo-Christian ethics, tells Christians at a prayer breakfast, no less, to get off their high horse after Christians get their heads cut off, not even willing to mention Islamic extremism, when the President of the United States allows hordes of immigrants whose names, let alone backgrounds, we don't even know, while ISIS proudly announces that they're infiltrating these refugees, when states are not even notified who the federal government is sending to live in their neighborhoods, flying in unknowns from Central America and the Middle East en masse, and they demand Sharia law in place of American law, then we are in the wilderness, folks. And I don't want to hear that Americans need to be more humble, that we need more humility, that my free speech needs to be tamped down so as not to offend another's religion. Nowhere does our Constitution say we cannot say something about another's religion. Nowhere does our Constitution say we cannot say anything that offends others. And by the way, where does it say I can't have a gun? Do not use our Constitution against us while you use the same Constitution to shield those who violate our laws, showering them with all the rights and benefits, but none of the responsibilities. When our president's first response to an American getting his head cut off is to show up in a golf cart and then keep on golfing, when he is and his attorney general's response to Americans being killed by Muslim terrorists is to stand up for Muslims, then it's time to take our country back. And don't tell me that to not take these people in is not who we are. I know who we are. My grandfather was a part of the greatest generation that stormed that beach in Normandy. My dad saw the plume in Nagasaki and later died early because of it. No, you don't preach to me. I know who we are, and I know who I am. I am an unapologetic nationalist. I am an unapologetic American. And that Statue of Liberty that says, give me your tired and your poor and your huddled masses, we never had a problem taking them in from the beginning. We're the most generous country in the world. As a judge, I've sworn in newly naturalized citizens for years and have never been more proud of immigrants and America. But they do it legally. They have to swear allegiance to America, follow our laws, and they cannot be exempt from arrest because of their illegal status, as they now are in sanctuary cities. Even the Supreme Court had to stop the president who attempted to ban the deportation of 4 million illegals and give them an automatic right to work here. Folks, when a man running for president proudly carries with him the sword of socialism, and when a woman running for president accepts money from countries that kill gays and stone women to death for her family's so-called charity, when their holdings are invested in the Cayman Islands and her husband is middleman to some of the world's biggest deals as they feather their nest at the expense of America, it is time to take the country back. So no, I don't believe in globalization. I don't believe in this internationalist mumbo-jumbo hogwash. I don't believe in self-denigration. I believe in our nation state. I believe in our borders. And I believe in the law, the Constitution, and the Declaration of Independence that outlines the character of the people and who we are. Every week, I speak to you in front of a backdrop. But it's so much more than that. It's the American flag. It represents the spilled blood and treasure of those who gave up everything for this great nation. It stands for freedom, equality, and justice. And I'm damn proud of it. And that's my open. Tell me what you think on my Facebook page or Twitter, hashtag Judge Jeanine. And joining me now is the co-host of The Five, Juan Williams. Good evening, Juan. Nice to have you on the show tonight. How are you?
I'm great. The weather is great. Good evening, Judge Jeanine. Your opening statement was strong.
Yes. All right, let's talk about Brexit. I appreciate that. So I won't let you hit me right off the bat, Juan.
Nope.
What do you think is happening with Brexit, Juan, and the fact that, you know, the Brits decided to exit the EU? What was that about?
Well, I think there are a number of things to say here. One is I think you have a lot of people reacting to the immigration issue that we know is very high on their agenda. And secondly, the impact of the loss of so many jobs, especially in Britain. You've had a terrific, recession. They got hit much harder than we got hit here in the United States. Their unemployment is much higher. So I think you have those factors playing. But to pick up on what you said in your opening statement, anybody in this country who thinks, well, gee, we're so different, they might be whistling past the graveyard, Judge Jeanine, because you look at the polls over there, the polls were wrong. You look at the anti-establishment fervor over there. I see a lot of it over here. And when you stop and think about, even the history, remember, Margaret Thatcher won and brought conservatism to Great Britain. The next year, it was Ronald Reagan right here in the United States. But where I think you're off a bit is our electorate is much different over there. They don't have the diversity. The working class there is almost all white, while the working class here has lots of Latinos
Juan,
and
that's
black
a great
people.
point. That's a great point. We are more diverse, but it was about London, almost the urban, more cosmopolitan versus the other areas. But London and the Brits have a big immigration issue too, so they're not as homogenous as they once were. But isn't there a worldwide reaction to this immigration thing, this lunacy of, no borders anymore? And I know you're not a Trump fan, and I am a Trump fan. But, he has hit a chord that I don't believe Hillary Clinton can ever hit.
No, but remember two things. One is, for Britain and for the European Union, they have endless borders, and they were being controlled by the European Union in Brussels in terms of immigration flows and entry. Here in the United States, we are blessed to have two large oceans, and we have two neighbors, Canada and Mexico. That's about it. You talk about Syrian refugees and fears that they're being infiltrated by terrorists. Germany's taken in millions. We've taken in less than 10,000. I don't even think 2,000 at this juncture.
I think now they're not talking about 500% more. But look, Juan, you admit that we're flying them in. We are flying them into states around the country and not giving those states notice. I mean, there is a war going on between some of the in Congress who have no say with any of these refugee programs or bringing them in. We don't know who they are.
Well, of course we know who they are. They have to go through a strict screening. And let's take the Syrian refugees, for example. It's 2 years, Judge Jeanine, before they can come anywhere near these shores. So we do know who's coming, but I think to your point, you look at what happened down in Orlando or San Bernardino. Those people were born in the United States. What we don't know, what we can't control is the kind of poisonous
I'm coming up against a break, Juan. Here's the thing. The head of the FBI said if we've got no database to match them to, and if they're good and they say I'm not a terrorist, we let them in. Let's stop kidding each other. I mean, there is this naivete that we have, Juan.
No.
Look,
you screen people, you go back, you talk to neighbors, you look at their work histories, you look at their educational.
You're going to go back to Syria? You're going to call Assad and say, hey, did they kill anybody lately? Come on, Juan. It's good to have you on the show, Juan. Thank you.
My pleasure, Judge. Good to be with you.
Another bad week for Hillary Clinton as we learned that the presumptive Democratic presidential nominee failed to hand over a key email to the State Department. Ain't that shocking? With me now is American Center for Law and Justice Chief Counsel, my friend Jay Sekulow. Hey, Jay, how are you?
Hey, Judge. How are you?
So
good.
Everybody's fed up with the email thing, but every week there's something coming in that contradicts something else that she said. Tell us about the significance of the particular email that was the bad news for Hillary this week.
Well, and this was because the narrative that Secretary Clinton has given since the beginning of this scandal when it first erupted was that she never received emails that were marked classified. They may have been marked classified after the fact, she said, but she had no knowledge of that. Well, it turns out, of course, that there were emails received that were marked, in fact, classified. So what has happened is the narrative that she started from the outset has been consistently proved to be incorrect. And again, you know, Judge, you and I talked about this the other day, and the fact is the Inspector General's report is the indictment. If there was going to be an indictment, it would be the Inspector General's report, which really destroys the entire narrative, including the narrative that she relied on legal counsel from the State Department, their lawyers. She did not. The lawyers said they didn't know anything about this until it was in the media. So that I think it's showing the depth of the inconsistencies. But the problem, of course, is will the FBI make the recommendation, but then will the
Justice Department go forward? And you know my thoughts on that because she emailed the president on this unsecure server, classified information. The president is complicit. Her first witness is, for the defense, is Barack Obama. We would have a constitutional crisis. There's no way they're going to indict her for that. I think it's the foundation they can get her on. But let me ask you about this. You know, she is so secret. If the FBI can show through its forensic analysis of the deleted emails that what was deleted is the connection between her doing favors for China and Russia and Uzbekistan and Saudi Arabia, while at the same time they were given money, then an indictment should be forthcoming.
Well, this is the, you know, of course, this is the aspect you know as a judge and I know as a lawyer, litigator. The fact is the FBI goes where the evidence leads. And here in this particular situation, you've got the unusual situation where a Secretary of State and at the same time her husband and their family have the foundation. And the foundation apparently has been receiving gifts from a variety of governments, many of which have horrible records on human rights issues. But if, in fact, there was a quid pro quo, and the Supreme Court's going to decide a big quid pro quo case tomorrow, probably Monday, the fact is that could be the real
Jay, here's the bottom line. People don't care that she talks out of both sides of her mouth, that she's in favor of women while she's got, you know, the team that trashes all the women that her husband fooled around with and did worse. But what they do care about is the pay for play. If they were making money at the expense of Americans and our interest, if Russia has 20% of our uranium because Bill Clinton, as a middleman, was able to cut a deal with Canada and Uzbekistan, where a guy over there was actually indicted for the deal himself, then, you know, then I think shame on them if they don't do it. But what about Democrats? I mean, you know, they got to be smarter than this. She won't hand over her Wall Street speeches. Now we find out she met with Steve Schwarzman, Blackstone, and the CEO of all these major companies and banks, world banks, and dropped that information and left it off her calendar.
And I think here's what you've got, and you said this in your opening statement. The fact is that whole approach that the DNC is utilizing right now was thoroughly rejected in the United Kingdom as they pulled out of the EU. That same sentiment's here. The question will be, of course, politically, can Donald Trump take that sentiment and turn it into votes at the ballot box? But I think the vulnerability, clearly, on the issues, when you look at and you talk about immigration, and I'm the grandson of an immigrant, so my grandfather came in through Ellis Island. Exactly. But this sentiment's there. So I think there's vulnerability here. The question will be, will the American people take a look at the situation and say, you know what, this is our country, we're gonna take it back. And I think that's the real question of the day for the electorate.
And the fact that as a result of the Supreme Court decision, Obama can no longer ban the deportation of 4 million illegals and give them jobs because he feels like it. It's going to be a different world.
Yeah.
Jay Sekulow,
he said he had a pen and a phone. He ran out of a battery, and he's out of ink. That's what the Supreme Court said.
Thanks for being with us tonight, Jay.
Thanks, Judge.
All right. And one of Donald Trump's top economic advisors is here to talk with me about the Brexit vote and how the campaign can capitalize on it. My interview with him is next. And then Sheriff David Clark joins me live to talk about this week's Freddie